before Slam, I was at the Boston Globe, right? And so, being at a traditional newspaper, I was around people that were covering war and politics and
election years.
Yeah, like some serious stuff. And then there was me, and I just got to cover sports,
Ball players, what's going on? It's your boy Arden here, coming live in effect from the crib, man. Welcome to a new episode of the Ball Players Podcast, where we talk to special guests about their journeys within the game. And I'm excited for this episode because, first of all, this person to the right of me, easily one of my favorite writers in the game, right? I know y'all been reading that W Slam issue, that cover on the Aces, big Aces, but you've also are talking about someone who we want to talk Jaylen Brown story. Cade, Jalen Brunson, many classics along the way. And this is somebody who, honestly, for me, in the crazy industry that we work in, one of my dearest friends, somebody who I really rock with heavy, and she's just a big star in the business. So we're really happy to welcome to the Ball Players Podcast, Sway, associate editor at Slam. What up?
Thank you. You really hyped me up there. Thank you.
Got to.
No, I'm so honored to be here to do this with you. I mean, I admire you, and Ball Players is amazing, so I'm super hyped.
Hey, I'm happy that you're here. Seriously, again, what we've been able to work on together and build has been incredible, and I'm excited, Sway, for this episode because, a big, thing for us with the podcast is to highlight different journeys that people have within the game of basketball. So whether you're an actual ball player, whether you are a PR person, you make sneakers or whatever, we want to highlight those journeys. And today's episode is really special because you're the first writer who we get to highlight on this series. And I think there's so much for people to learn about what is a writer's journey within the game of basketball. So to get into it, Sway, what made you fall in love with the game of basketball?
I first really fell in love with the game of basketball really through my dad, honestly. I was very artistic. I was really into reading books and things like that. And my dad would just always have a basketball game on the TV, just playing at all, times of the day. And I just remember, my dad turning to me, I think I was in 5th, 6th grade maybe, and being like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I have no idea. I want to start a zoo." And my dad was like, "Well, you should be a sports writer." Because at the time, there was Sage Steele and Doris Burke and Jackie McMullen, but there weren't really a lot of women, at least from my dad's perspective, in the industry or, from what he saw on TV. And so he was just like, "Yeah, you should just do it." And I never wanted to do anything else. I'm a very hyper focused. Once I really set my mind on something, I'm like, okay, I only have a plan A. Plan B, that's not an option. We're just going to go full speed, 100 miles per hour. So that's when I really started falling in love with basketball. I was like, okay, I want to be a sports writer. My dad taught me about stats, how to read stats, what they mean. He would take me to WNBA games. Before I'm from Boston, so before I really started going to Celtics games, I went to Connecticut to see the Sun play and things like that. And that's when I was like, basketball is the coolest thing ever. And then once I got access to our computer and I could be on the internet, I was like, oh my gosh, all these storylines, feature stories, interviews. I was like, this is a whole world of content that I just became really obsessed with. So,
do you remember one of your first pieces that you ever wrote about sports?
So my first piece that I wrote was actually, I pretended that my dad was a professional basketball player.
Yeah.
And I interviewed him. I made him sit down and I was like, I'm going to interview you. He probably made up all of his answers. And I just wrote my own little story in my notebook. I have no idea where it is, but I was probably 9.
You just unlocked a key memory for me, in all seriousness. I remember in 3rd grade, I had for the entire year a notebook where I was writing a book about basketball. I did not know a lick about chapters. I did not know when a chapter was supposed to begin or end. But I remember I was just writing this book.
Yeah.
And that, for me, when I look back on it in retrospect, was my first moment writing about sports. Because, again, like you, right, you start falling in love with the game. You have this great interest. You're used to watching things. But to go as far as okay, I'm going to get a notebook and just write every day, all day. Going the length of, I'm going to interview my father for the sake of making this a story and a game. I think it's
Yeah.
incredible. And I want to, continue talking about your evolution, Sway, and the fact that, like, all right, let's fast forward. Sway's in high school. You're writing. Working in sports journalism is something that you want to do. What was a key experience or moment for you that re-emphasized your desire to work in the business?
So I was just thinking about that yesterday because I remembered that when I was in high school, we didn't have like a school newspaper or anything like that. We didn't have any like making any content about our sports teams. So I decided that I was going to create my school newspaper.
Fire.
Like from scratch. I made all of my friends join it because I was like, I need a team. I was like the editor-in-chief, the writer, the photographer, and I don't know how I even thought of this, but like I knew that my school would maybe say no if they had to print the newspaper out. And so I was like, well, let's just make a digital newspaper because all the kids are on their phones.
Incredibly smart.
I don't know how I like thought of that. But yeah, that was like the first time I really was like, I guess that was like my first real introduction into the industry. And I think also me being someone where it's like, oh, I'm just going to like create my own opportunity. I'm not going to like wait for someone to like create it for me. And so, yeah, that was my first experience.
That is genius.
Yeah.
That is genius because I vividly remember writing for my own like middle school and high school newspaper, but they used to print them joints out. And I think it would have been a lot better if we did make it digital because, again, everybody, like you said, is on their phone. And I want to get to the fact of, I feel like a very interesting thing about like our generation who works in the sports media world, especially through basketball, is a lot of our journeys in a way are very customizable. In terms of like how you get into the game, how you stay in it, how you pursue it. So for you, right, when you think about the plight of women in the world of sports and media, and then you think about your own journey, if you had to choose one word to describe it, what would be that word?
I would say empowering. I've had like so many women in the industry, from Christina Tapper to Mirren Fader, who I have looked up to since I was in high school, college. Like they empowered me even like before I had ever really written like a real feature story that got published, and before I was interviewing NBA players, even thought I was at that level to interview professional athletes. Like they would constantly empower me, and I feel like I feel the same way about so many women across the industry. It's like I'll go on Twitter or social media, TikTok, and even our interns, like I'm just so empowered. I feel like we are like at an age where, again, it's like, why wait for like someone to create the opportunities for you? Like, why wait for someone to, give you that validation? Like, let's just do it for ourselves. And I also like am so impressed with that, all of these content creators covering, especially like the WNBA. It makes me kind of wish I was like, dang, like when I was in college, I should have there was no TikTok, but I was like, oh, I would have loved to like just make fun content on my phone about basketball. And, I was over here thinking, oh, I had to wait until I got my first real job in the industry and got hired. Whereas I just see so many people not even waiting for that and just being like, I love basketball, I'm going to make content about it.
What do you think has enabled that change? Because, I remember from our first conversation, right, last December, shout out to DraftKings, starting 5. We was on shoot for that. And I remember we were there talking, and I think this for us was like we're officially locked in. This is why we're going to be cool. Because we both talked about how we both grew up in a time in the industry where the traditional route was all we knew. You need to do this in high school, then you need to go to college, and then you need to eat crap for like 10 years, and then you make it. But we were like, we saw that the world wasn't accepting of that anymore. It was like you just said so well, everybody's getting it the way they want to get it, and they're going, I'm going to get it right here, right now.
Facts.
So for you, do you think there was a certain moment or time that like you started realizing like, okay, like people are playing by their own rules. Like what we grew up under isn't really applicable anymore. Do you think there was a certain moment, or it just naturally happened?
That's a good question. I do think, like the rise of content creators and honestly TikTok, I feel like is what really, really like, I feel like has pushed this momentum at like hyper speed. But I also feel like, we're covering basketball, right? So like look at players today. They're on social media. They have their own podcasts. They don't necessarily need to wait for someone to like interview them to to tell the world how they feel about something. Like, I feel like it's the culture. I feel like the culture has really changed, and, you know, along with it, social media and, you know, people really kind of speaking up for themselves, player empowerment. Like, I feel like once the culture really started shifting, the media industry as a result, like, reacted from that. For sure.
And speaking of culture, I want to speak to something that's near and dear to me as well as you, writing.
Yes.
The art of writing, right?
Yeah.
When thinking about the culture of writing these days, and I know this is something that we've talked about as well off camera, which is like there's so many more participants willing to write, and there's so many people that have made something out of it. What do you think inspired people to now want to write? Because I remember ball players, a time where being a writer wasn't cool.
Yeah.
Nobody was trying to write besides the writers, and now everybody and their mother want to write. And now everybody getting a freelance bag. Everybody's able to write and do all these different things. So for you, how do you feel, especially in basketball? I mean, there's so many now more basketball writers.
Yes.
How does that make you feel when you see that spark and interest of people who not only want to write about the game, but they're going, whether it's real or not, I want to make this a career. Like, I want to be a basketball writer.
Oh, I love it. First of all, reading and writing is so underrated.
Facts.
It's so underrated. No, and like it really like I just think it's amazing that so many people, especially within basketball, whether it's like news, feature stories, interviews, Q&As. I mean, if you can write, you can, you know, like interviewing, for example, is kind of a form of writing. You have to write the questions at first, you know. Producing video content, writing scripts, like writing an email is a version of writing. No, I think it's amazing. And I just think writing is one of those things. I'm not going to lie. There was a point in time where I was like, oh, video content. Everyone just wants to watch videos. And I didn't know what the future of writing was going to be. I didn't know if people would even want to read a 2,200 word cover story, you know, or a 1,200 word Q&A type of thing. And then, you know, I'll go on Twitter and people will be like, oh, this part of the story was so good. Or, you know, I'll see other people's works. There's also Substack, Patreon. Like, everyone's picking up the pen. And I love it because that's more for me to read and consume. So, no, I love it. I love it. And I just think, like, it's just going to get bigger and bigger. And, I mean, like we were talking about off camera, every writer has their own voice and their own style. And I'm constantly inspired reading new writers' works because I'm like, oh, yes, a new voice. So.
And for you, Sway, right, when it comes to writing, you're essentially a purist, right? But you have adopted to and embraced the social media age of things with how content is consumed, right? Even with writing, for example, you know, a lot of articles by certain publications get repurposed as graphics. So it's big quotes, big everything, one-liners, etc. For you, again, right, being a writing purist, how have you successfully embraced social media to be like, I'm still old school with how I look at the writing game and how I love it, but I also know these new age tricks to continue to, you know, further my career?
Yeah, I feel like viewing social media as like art and like a platform. Like for me, I am a very like visual person. So like, you know, even for me when we're making quote cards of, you know, parts of the interview and, you know, even like the caption and things like that, I view it as like a content package. So like the content pack, we'll use like a cover, for example. The cover is, you know, part of the content package. Then there's the cover story. And then there's social media, which is how, honestly, at this point, that's where people get their news. You know, that's how people consume information. So like, I really, really love it, and I feel like I've embraced social media of just using it as a tool, you know, of like, hey, world, here's my story that I wrote. Here's the part of the story that I really like, or the anecdote that I got from this player. And yeah, the cover's really cool, and all the photos are amazing, and it's an entire content package for you to consume. And, you know, I've been learning a lot from, you know, my coworkers and our team at Slam about, you know, social cuts and producing videos. And, you know, since I've gone or transitioned from not only just writing cover stories to now, you know, producing cover shoots and things like that, I feel like it's just like opened my third eye where I'm like, oh, art, like, let's just make art, and I'm going to write this story, and we're just going to make this entire like body of work. I've started, I guess, like, I used to call myself a writer, then I used to call myself an editor, and now I've just been calling myself a creative.
Because it's just the natural evolution.
Yeah.
You know, like I I can speak to that too. You know, like most of my 15-year career was as a writer.
Yeah.
And then I realized like I'm learning all of these other skill sets. Like I'm learning how to
Facts.
be an on-air talent, produce, edit,
Yes.
goddamn book talent, like
Yeah.
all of that stuff. So you just realize like, yeah, like creative is ultimately what I am.
Mm-hmm.
I just happen to have all of these skill sets. And I have a couple more questions for you,
Yeah.
Sway. I want to talk, you know, obviously about, you know, the basketball Bible, slam, and how kudos to y'all. Y'all have been very much at the forefront of really telling different stories to where y'all have really embraced high school basketball at another level. Y'all have embraced women's basketball at another level. The successful launch of W Slam. Shout out to Camille and everybody
Shout out
there.
Camille.
Shout out to, of course, again, the latest issue. So, Sway, I want to ask you, how has Slam successfully embraced the different sides of basketball that even if it isn't mainstream,
Yep.
y'all have found ways to properly highlight it, and then it makes its way to the mainstream, especially women's basketball?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to the culture. You know, like we have had, you know, even within the magazine, we don't just have feature stories on, you know, athletes. We have artists, we've had musicians, we had, you know, stories of like the oldest basketball court of all time, things like that. And I feel like especially when it comes to women's basketball, I mean, again, we mentioned Camille, right? Like as I wrote, as my coworker Maya and I wrote in the editor's letter, like Camille really championed us. You know, Camille would constantly be, you know, talking about women's basketball, supporting us. When I first got to Slam, W Slam gave me like a shout out on Twitter, things like that. And so I think just the culture that Slam has built within, you know, even our own team, that really channels through our work. You know, we really are like passionate about basketball, and we are like, you know, there are many of us that are basketball purists, and then there's us, you know, the new age where we're like, oh, TikTok, did you see such and such players TikTok, and stuff like that. But I think especially when it comes to women's basketball and W Slam, you know, the WNBA and women's basketball has been growing to like new levels now, and it's incredible, and I'm obsessed with it. I can't wait for like the college season to come back because it's gonna be fire. And we've just been having fun, like W Slam 3. I mean, even this cover shoot, all the content, like we just approached it with like, let's just have fun. Like we're here with the aces, you know, like all, you know, there's all of these other incredible stories in the magazine. Like, I mean, even our rollout, like we just had fun with it. We're like, let's treat this cover drop like an album release. It's giving Drake, it's giving Beyonce, it's giving the girlies just want to have fun.
It did give very much an album drop. Like I'm not gonna lie. It definitely felt very music-y in terms of, it was like, oh, word, new cover drop? What what's going on? Oh, snap. Aces, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think like the natural progression. So
Yep.
I think kudos to obviously you and the team on that, and shout out to Aces and everything. Vegas, hella lit. I'm going to take this time to make a quick PSA. If there's a city, now that your boy has, you know, enjoyed WNBA All-Star Weekend, Vegas. Every time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Vegas every damn time. Listen, I know we want to be fair across the league. Look, I'm a proud New Yorker, so I can't wait for the W to pop through to New York for All-Star Weekend.
Facts.
But damn it, keep it in Vegas. Vegas is too much fun. It's perfect, especially in July with NBA Summer League, the fire high school basketball tournaments going on. I had the chance to see Bryce James and Kyron Anthony play on the same team. Side note, I've officially won at life because Savannah James said hello to me.
What?
As well as Lala. I almost didn't come back to New York.
How are you feeling?
I feel great. I almost didn't come back. Felt like I should have kept my life in Vegas. I won.
Oh my God.
I won.
Wow.
I won in life. Mama James said hello.
Wow.
Shout out to Gloria.
Shout out Gloria.
I'm Himothy.
You are Himothy.
I can't help
Him.
it. I can't help it.
I love this for
But
you.
to close out the podcast, Sway, at the top of the show, I asked you, what made you fall in love with the game? So rightfully, I need to ask you, what keeps you in love with the game?
It's so much fun. Like, I feel like I've said this a few times to different people, but like, you know, before Slam, I was at the Boston Globe, right? And so, you know, being at a traditional newspaper, I was around people that were covering war and politics and
election years.
Yeah, like some serious stuff. And then there was me, and I just got to cover sports, you know? And so like now I'm just like, I'm so grateful for this job, and I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for basketball, because at the root of it, like, it's just fun. It's supposed to be a fun game, you know, like, and now I've lately been having this perspective of, you know, I get to interview exceptionally talented people that can do exceptional things that I cannot. You know, and so I'm like, let's just have fun. Like, I feel like fun is so underrated. And I feel like now I've gotten to this point in my career, you know, where I'm just like, I'm just going to keep having fun. Like, when I'm writing stories, I'm having fun. You know, when I'm at shoots, I'm having fun. I'm dancing around, I'm singing.
It does look like you're having fun.
I'm having a lot of fun. And so, yeah, that's just kind of my approach. It's like, I don't know. Can I swear on this podcast?
100%.
My motto in life is fuck it, we ball. Like, that's just been my mindset for everything of, like, just ball out and have fun.
It is a lovely street example of art.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
And a wise man once said, if you know me, you're going to be like, oh, brother, here we go again. But a wise man once said, the moment you stop having fun with it, I'll be done with it.
Exactly.
If you know who I'm talking about. If you don't, hint, he's from Canada.
Exactly.
What you want me to do?
And that's my Instagram bio. Just having fun with it.
Just having fun. Sway.
Yay.
GOAT. Thank you so much
You're
for
the
being
goat.
on the Ball Players Podcast. Greatly appreciate you.
Of
Of course,
course.
y'all be able to get all of the info to check out Sway on social and via her work in the bios and everything below. Ball Players, this is Arden signing off here. Thank y'all so much for listening to the latest episode of the podcast. Until next time, my friends. Peace.
Thank you.